My relationship sponsor, Ellen. Sippy, sippy.
I'm an alcoholic, and I want to welcome anybody that's new or anybody that's coming back. I'm glad you're here. If you're new or coming back, I hope tonight's your night, and it can be. I've been sober since 1975, so I've been sober a long time, and I tell you how I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I worked with this guy he managed his apartment house in El Segundo, and I was over there on a Saturday morning, and I was over there on a Saturday morning. He said, "We got an alcoholic living here." I said, "You do?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you know anything about AA?" I said, "No, I don't even know what the hell that is." Well, he said, "My wife called this AA thing. And these two guys are supposed to come over and do some shit with this guy. I don't know what to do." He said, "Come on over, I'll show him to you." So we go over to his apartment, and he was named Tony. He was a young kid, too. And he was kicked off the Olympic diving team for drinking. And he was in bed drinking a bottle of Coolers or something, Budweiser, I think, and smoking a cigarette and crying like a little bitch. And so about 2 hours later, these two guys came from Alcoholics Anonymous. And Johnny, he just took 54 years. Years ago, we used to 12-step people. We used to go to their house, two people at a time. And Johnny said, "Tony's too drunk to take to a meeting today." So he said, "But if I show you where to take him tomorrow, will you take him?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll take him." So the next morning, me and my buddy, we take him to Alcoholics Anonymous at Birch Street at 9 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning. And we were a little bit late. And so we got in there, and I'll tell you what I heard that day. They were reading out of the big book, and they said, "Rarely have we seen a person fail who thoroughly followed our path." And I said, "Well, I wonder what that path is." And so I said, "I'm going to come back and find out about that path." So I was brought here by a group myself because I never knew Tony. I didn't like him really either. And it just happened, God put me in the right place at the right time, and I was brought to AA. And I got sober, but Tony didn't. He was in and out of AA for quite a while. And so I let him stay at my house one time when he was trying to get sober. He left some personal things there. And next month will be 50 years, and I still have them. Because I always think that one day I'm going to see him at an AA meeting, because if it hadn't been for Tony, I'd never get sober. I know it. And so if you're here tonight, believe me, you're lucky. You're really lucky, because most of us are dying drunk, loaded, sober. And I've had a panel on Skid Row for 47 years downtown. And we used to have it in the park. And the lady that got sober down there, she always come back to the park because she was so grateful that she got sober. And she picked up a stray bullet down there in the back of her head. It's brutal down there. So now we have it in the Midnight Mission. And the last month when I was down there, I don't have a whole lot of time to tell a whole story, so I'm just rambling. But I was down there, and we had some time left in the meeting, and I said to, there's quite a group there, and I said, "Anybody want to share any of their fears?" This little girl put her hand up and said, "My name is so-and-so. I'm afraid I'm going to die on the street, and I'm going to be raped, and my kids are all on the street. My mother's on the street. Another kid got up there and said, I'm afraid I'm going to die on the street, and I have a little 9-year-old daughter, and I don't want her to tell her friends that her daddy died on the street. That's real alcoholism. See, we're lucky here. This is foo-foo AA. we can go out and get in our car and go home. But there's a lot of those people down there tonight are sleeping on cardboard boxes and under cars so they won't get rolled. So I want to remember, because I have an ego that tells me I'd never get that bad. A lot of those people down there thought the same thing. I'll never get that bad. Yeah, I was always pointing my finger at life and never willing to take a look at myself. Always blaming somebody for something and never willing to step up to the plate and be responsible. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they told me a few things I didn't want to hear. One was, you can't blame your mommy and daddy anymore. You don't have a choice who they are. Another one, they told me to get a job and keep your fucking mouth shut while you're on the job. Nobody will know you're crazy. And another thing they told me was, the only thing you have to worry about your childhood, it's over. And I didn't want to hear any of those stuff. Those are true. Those are things that happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you can get into therapy and find out a lot of stuff about yourself. And the therapist will tell you what they did to you. You come to Alcoholics Anonymous, you got to tell us what you did to them. And I didn't want to hear that either. And because I didn't want to get honest with myself. And so if you're new or just come to Alcoholics Anonymous, we're not trying to sell you anything here tonight. If you want what we have, it's available to you tonight. And, it don't cost much to come here to stay sober. And I've had a good sober life. I'm 83, and beauty does fade away. And dumb is forever. So I got those two things going for me, and I'm very grateful for that, because you can be too smart for this program, thinking that I know a lot of people that I'd really like to help, but they won't let me. They won't put the plug in the jug. They're going to do it their way, and the book says if you want what we have, not what you have. I didn't, because I'm very grateful, and that's enough Dear Abby shit out of me.
Wow. Shazam. Now you know why I hang with him, right? All right, Bubba Louie. All right, where are we here? Now our main speaker will share her experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Julie.
Thanks, Heather. Julie Alcoholic. And welcome to everybody. It's so great to see you all. And Alan, thank you for coming out and speak. I always love it when Alan speaks. Alan is such a special person to me. I was secretary here about, I don't know, the first time in about 10 to 12 years ago. And I didn't know Alan well then. But we used to come in, this was a really large meeting. We'd come to set it up at 6 by 5:45. We'd be in here at 6 o'clock. Alan always came in, sat in the back, and we started chatting and we started talking. And I was nervous as a secretary for the first time. We'd talk about dogs and cats and, coyotes. And a beautiful friendship developed. Alan really kind of helped me. And I'm so grateful to Alan when I had cancer and I was in chemo. Alan used to, and it was during COVID, Alan would bring food over and drop it off for us. And Alan, thank you. I just love you. Alan's like my big brother, right? So grateful. I'm grateful to be here. Like I said, I had been coming to this meeting for a really long time. 20-some years. And then at a certain point, it was time to, check out other meetings. So we left, we checked out other meetings for a while, but I think we're kind of back now. And it's, this is home. This is really home. It doesn't look quite the same, especially now. I mean, it's a little smaller. The chair, I was this format, I have to tell you, I kind of put this format together, and just to show you how seriously I took my job, this was the seating chart that I had. And I made people I believe like an orderly seating made for orderly, whatever, I don't know, message, right? People sit down, sit straight, and you will get it. Because you know what? I'm an alcoholic, right? And it helped. It helped me to look out and see the chairs. I was also a third grade teacher, so, Anyway, I'm getting a little off topic, but that's okay, because it's fun and it's great, and honestly, it's really great. Like Jan, it's really so nice to be here. Heather, and thanks, Heather, for introducing me. So, oh gosh, lets me talk. I couldn't tell stories just, like Alan. I've got a lot of stories, because let me tell you, I drank and used for over 30 years. So in that time, you collect a lot of stories, adventures, but for me, my drinking and using career started when, I was 15 years old on the beach in Laguna, smoking pot in a little cave with some guys, with some of my other little friends. We were kids, and this was like 1966. We were barefoot, smoking pot. I've never smoked pot before, and I remember there was all this discussion. Should we do it? Should we try it? I don't know. Anyway, so we're there, and I see down the beach, some kids jumping up and down, saying something. I'm like, what's that kid saying? Police? And then it's like, police! So in that moment, we go running. There are 4 girls and the boys. We go running out of it was barely a cave. Go running out, and the police standing over us. They've got their guns, because this is 1966. Things were pretty rough for if you're smoking pot. Right? So they took us in. Wow. And I remember on the top of that cliff, got the handcuffs on. It's sunset. There's a little bit of I have long hair, a little bit of a breeze blowing, a beautiful sunset. I'm barefoot, I'm looking around. I feel like, I don't know, James Bond or something. I felt so cool. I did not, and that shows I was a kid. I did not absorb that I was arrested, getting taken to the police station. So, they took us in, Laguna Beach, 4 little girls. The boys were known drug dealers, and they took us in. We told them a story. And remember, it's 1966. It wasn't too common in 1966 for little girls to be smoking dope on the beach. They took us home. They took us in, and we told them our story. We just happened to be walking down the beach to see the sunset. The boys called us over. We went over, and we just realized that something smelled funny. They let us go. They let us walk out of the police station. No parents were called. We got to walk home to where we were staying in Laguna Beach. One of the girls' parents had a apartment there at the beach. That was kind of what the high school kids did in those days. From Downey, went to stay at beaches. And so that was the beginning of my career. You'd think I would have thought, ooh, that pot smoking is not good stuff. I should stop. No, I immediately found a friend who had a car, had a connection, and had a new best friend. And it went on from there. And I know this is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. But, and I know I've said the 60s about 5 zillion times, but, it was, I was a little flower child. It was, peace and love, and there was a lot of dope smoking. There was a lot of psychedelic taking, and where it was fun in the beginning, it's, I just wanted to get high, and if I couldn't get high, my drug of choice was marijuana. Then my new friend, who became a good friend, had an older sister that would buy us beer or alcohol. I didn't know how to drink beer. I mean, I learned how to drink beer in a McDonald's cup with a straw. Because the very first McDonald's, or maybe second, was in the town I grew up in, Downey, right? You know that? My mother would drive by and say, "Go home, Julie." Because we'd hang out in the parking lot. She'd scream at me to go home. Like, oh, and yeah, it was funny, but it was funny, and there was something kind of almost magical. I mean, I had an older friend, a guy, and I would see him in his, there was a lot of Indian tapestries hanging around, and he'd be sitting in front of the picture, meditating, and Maharishi, Paharama, Yogi, whoever it was. And I thought, wow, that is, and he'd be high on LSD. And I think, he's looking for nirvana. So I thought the way we find nirvana is to take a psychedelic, right? And that was happening. But so what happened? So what happened was those things didn't work. I started getting arrested more, right? That's my spunsy giggling over in the corner. I started getting arrested. I got arrested again. I got arrested 3 times before I was 18. And they, told me that if I got arrested one more time, I would go straight to juvenile hall. They would not tell my parents. They would just, send me away, and, good luck. So anyway, as I said, I would drink if we couldn't get drugs. After my last third arrest, I was finished with high school. I think I was in the community college, and I decided and I had applied to an art school, or I applied after. I made my first geographic. I didn't know it was a geographic. I got accepted into San Francisco Art Institute, moved up there. And up there, all of a sudden, I'm this kid. I'm like 19 years old, by myself, lonely, living in the Fillmore district in this little kind of underneath apartment. Did not know, how to take care of myself, barely. I can't remember if I had a sweater, And but what I did learn how to do was walk into the liquor store and buy wine. And the school I went to, San Francisco Art Institute, drinking and drug use was, we had our special place, we got high. In the studios, you drank because, we were artists, so we needed to be free. But it was not, but I was going down that path of, after I left the, safety of my home and the friends that I'd had, but they just, they went other ways too, and by myself, I didn't know how to make friends. And it didn't work like it used to. Buying dope, and I didn't even know how to find marijuana up there, but it wasn't like here when I was a kid, I wasn't like, oh, let's go get high. No, it was different. I mean, even though I was at school and people are getting high and drinking, it wasn't working as that intro to, oh, now we're best friends and let's, go to the, whatever that Rose Palace, no, the Rose Palace was here, it didn't work that way. So what happened for me in San Francisco, I went down even darker path, because now there's, I know something's going on. I know I can't connect. And the only way I knew to connect was through drugs and alcohol, but it's not working. So my only, my best idea was, oh, more drugs and alcohol, right? Didn't really work. I got in with even more. They all seemed like such nice people. That's the thing. I got in with an element from South America, and I'm not going to go into big details. Today you might call it cartel. In those days we called it black market. you know? I mean, and I had I kind of semi-adopted somebody who became my best friend from a South American country where we would go and she'd had, little bags of diamonds or gold, and we'd sell things because she brought this stuff to start over because in those countries, times are so bad. But, I was with this element that was just going to end me up in a lot of trouble. And I didn't even, I didn't have a clue. I was starting to see that something was wrong. Something, my life was not working. As it says in the book, true partnership with my fellow man, I could not find. I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what I was doing. In San Francisco, I began to have my very first blackouts. I began to learn what a blackout is all about. I didn't know that. And, it wasn't fun. So I decided I'd come back to LA after I graduated. And I actually got tired. I was at this wonderful art school, but being the, defiant, self-reliant or self-centered or whatever alcoholic I was, I decided I needed to graduate. They had early graduation. I put a show up of my work in the plaza of the school and had the president come and look at it and said, give me my degree. And they did. It was like, okay, get out of here. I know. So I left and came down here, and my plan was to go to a art school in England. And what happened, and I brought my friend from South America down with me, and my plan was to go to this art school in England, and I saw, what happened was I was driving down the street, and a friend rear-ended me from behind, and I hit the car in front. So I was in this car accident that left me pretty much, laying around taking muscle relaxers and pain pills, that I never made it any further. And what I did, and I often look back and think, well, that was a real turning point, because at that point, maybe I could have dug myself out. Maybe I could have done something different. Maybe my path would have been a little different had I gone where I was going to go, because I was supposed to, there was one of the professors was going to help me get started and all this and that. But instead, I just laid around taking drugs and, my mom's house, and didn't get any further. I didn't have a clue. I left there. Finally, I left my mom's house. I didn't have a clue how to take care of myself. I didn't have a clue how to get a job. I think what I did eventually, what I did was, I think I'll go back to school, because that's always safe. So I went to an art school here. That was good. But again, Julie followed me. I mean, Julie was there, and it wasn't that much better. I wasn't getting up. I got a job working nights at a after-hours club, and so that was, again, after-hours club. How did I stay up and go to school, right? So I was getting high, all night long, and it was a very popular club. They had music, they had after-hours. They had the drag show across the street. There was a bar that I would run across the street to the bar to get a drink and, and come back. And some good friends of mine owned the club, so I never got in any kind of trouble. And that's kind of like how things would go for me, is I had all these, one could say lucky breaks, but were they really lucky, I mean, so I didn't have any consequences. And was it really a plus for me? I don't think, not really. Looking back, it's like, I don't think it was really a plus. So what happened was I continued, let's see, so now, it's almost time for me to get sober here. So, But like I said, it was a lot. Oh, I know what happened. I got tired of working in that club. This is a big turning point. You guys are going to get a kick out of this. This is a real big turning point. I know. Don't look at your watch. So I decided I didn't want to wait tables anymore. So I decided to become a chauffeur. Right? I was one of the first female chauffeurs in Los Angeles, 1981. And one night, it was New Year's, night before New Year's, and this client liked me to drive her around. She'd liked to take me into the clubs with her, and then she'd say to people there at the club, "Oh, this is my chauffeur. We could take you for a ride." But so I was, and let me tell you about resentments. It's really true. Resentment is our number one offender. I mean, I resented having to do it. I resented having to drive so long. Sometimes you'd have to be driving like 14 hours, and I learned how to reach behind, push the scotch button, take a drink, and drive. I was like, they'd hire a chauffeur because they didn't want to be drinking and driving. Anyway, so I dropped off the client, get in the stretch limousine, jamming on to take it to the hotel in Beverly Hills, and I smash into a car, right? Total the front end of the car. And I'll never forget, these two guys try to get the keys from me. And I thought, oh, no way. And I grabbed the keys, put on the alarm, take off. Again, I'm like, Superfly or something. And parked the car in the hotel, Beverly Hills, parked and never said anything, dropped off the key, got in my car, cracked up my car going over Beverly Glen. 2 accidents in one night. I wasn't hurt. I was drunk. I didn't get hurt. The next morning, the manager of the classic coach limo company calls me up and says, "Did something happen to the car last night?" I said, "Oh yeah, that, And I said, "I got in an accident. There was an altercation. They tried to take the key. Blah blah blah." "Oh, you poor thing." And it was going to be New Year's, and they wanted me to drive this client because she was a big moneymaker. So I had to go in. I'm in the office, and I was kind of, almost going to throw up. And he said, "You poor thing, do you want a Valium?" So this is what I was saying, that, I know, it's like no consequence. I cracked up 2 cars, and they still wanted me to go out, giving me a Valium, had to do it. But I decided, you know what? I'd already, a number of years before, thought, the problem is psychedelics. I have to stop taking psychedelics, right? Then I thought, oh, you know what? The problem is scotch. Cannot, just like the book, cannot drink scotch. No more scotch. Okay, so I'll just drink wine, right? And I spent that was 1981. I got sober in 1998. So I spent the next, 17 years just slowly percolating with my red wine, nothing else. I ended up, all that fun I used to have, I had a little cottage in North Redondo. I ended up, there's a little breezeway in front, just sitting on that sofa, drinking my wine by myself. Didn't want to go anywhere, didn't want to, someone had told me, someone that I dated, that you should not be out like this. And I thought, you know what, that's right. I should just stay home. So I did for, I don't know how long, but not forever, but I spent a good amount of time home drinking. And I had to figure out, when I was at school, art school down here, I had this friend, her name was Robin, I don't think she'd mind, and she drank pretty much the way I did. Actually, I think she drank a little more, and we'd go out occasionally, we'd go out, and on one evening we went to have sushi, but that really meant to drink sake. And we're coming back and we're talking, and she says, we have to really watch our drinking because we're going to have to go to AA if we don't do something about it. And I thought, you're right. And I said, and because she was worried about going to all the liquor stores, buying her wine. I was worried about taking my bottles out in the trash, the recycling. In those days, it was just a one bin that was open. It wasn't the nice closed ones we have now that you could roll out. So I was like, yeah, you're right, we have to do something about it. Meanwhile, she's like hitting the center divider. It wasn't immediately after that, but at a certain point after that, she calls me, and it's in January. And it's about January 14th, I could say exactly. And she says, I haven't had a drink for 2 weeks. And I said, you're kidding. How did you do that? And she said, well, I got this book. It's really well written. It's called Drinking a Love Story. And you should get it. You should read it. It's really, really good. And I had just, that day, I was a teacher at that point, and I had gotten a notice that they were going to suspend my credential because I had forgotten to, I was teaching for 5 years, but I didn't get one credit that I needed to get to make my credential permanent. And so I was really, it was like, what? How could I do that? And and every day when I'd be coming home from work, like at 3:30 in the afternoon, I'd get so thirsty, I would just want a drink. And a drink that water does not help. So I was like really quite desperate when I got that, when she called, and I thought, oh man, what am I going to do? So she told me about this book, and the very next, and I had drank that night, and I was going to every day I'd try not to drink, and I'd get up and I'd see about this much in the wine bottle, that same thing. I get up, there's about this much wine in the wine bottle, and I said, I am going to a bookstore, I'm getting that book. And so I did. I got that book, Drinking a Love Story, and I started reading it. And in that book, I saw things that really, I never thought about. I saw the concept of not feeling comfortable in my own skin, which that was me totally. It was like, wow. I read that she had never had an opportunity to learn or grow from her experiences. And I thought that was me too, because I had, I was a scuba diver, I went around the world. Yes, I spent a lot of time home drinking, but I had a lot of interesting kind of adventures too. So I didn't have, I wasn't learning, I wasn't growing. I had all these experiences, and I saw she had an equation like drinking or pain plus drink equals no pain. Then pain plus drink equals more pain. And I thought, I'm at the more pain state. It had the 20 questions, which I did. And I had done before, but this time it really sunk in. So I decided, I'm going to see if I could do it. I'm going to see if I could not take a drink that day. And I didn't. I didn't take a drink for one whole day. It was like, wow. And then the next day, I thought, I'm going to see if I could not take a drink the next day. And by now, I'm starting to feel the effects of not taking a drink. I mean, yes, I'm starting to detox. I'm starting to feel, shaky. I'm starting to feel like I have no balance, cold sweats, hot sweats, all of it. And it was like, whoa. The next day, didn't take a drink, and I'm starting to really see alcohol, that little bit of alcohol. I'm like, that stuff is poison, and I'm home in my house alone, and I'm seeing that this is horrible. This is like toxic, and I cannot do it anymore. And it was quite a few days. I mean, I was there it was at least a week. I had my dad come over. We retiled the kitchen cabinet to keep me like busy. And so I started thinking, I had received the LGBTQ flyer for Redondo Beach, and it talked about gay AA, and it had a calendar. And I thought, oh, maybe I couldn't try that. And so I called, there was a number, I think it was Brian, and I called the number. They told me when there was, and I thought, maybe I should go to AA. And I was in therapy at the time, and the therapist, of course, told the therapist, she said, well, how much do you drink? Because there were some other things. I mean, yes, I was home quietly drinking, but I also, like, ripped up out there. I mean, I was a violent drink. I was like a Jekyll and Hyde. I was like not a vision for you or So, and it was always when I was drinking that I'd have these escapades. So she said, well, how much do you drink? Oh, just a couple glasses of wine, because I'd had a friend who was a bartender, and she would cut me off at 2 glasses of any drink, so I knew 2 was like the magic, the number you were supposed to have. So I'd say, yes, 2 glasses, that's all. And, it was lied. It was just a lie. And because I never had just 2 glasses. I never could stop at 2 glasses. So anyway, she said, well, maybe you should try Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, oh, no. I'm not a people person. I don't think it'll work for me. And so she said, oh, okay, well, maybe you should try it just to confirm within yourself that you could do it. And I was like, well, oh, okay. So, and I had one other friend too that said, yeah, you should try it. It might help. And so I decided, this little voice kept saying, go to AA, maybe, because I was messed up. I mean, I was, I knew like the detox was heavy duty. I mean, after, 10 days or so, it was like, ugh. And so I this little voice, I thought, oh, maybe if I go to AA, they'll tell me I can drink some special teas or take warm baths or there's be something I can do that'll help me feel better. So I called up, I found out where the AA was, and it was just 5 blocks from my house. So I decided, it was a Wednesday night, I believe. I went down there, looked at it, drove home, smoked, I was still smoking then, had a cigarette, went back, walked in, and I was like, stood in the middle of the room, and some guy, came up to me and said, hi, you must be Julie. And I was like, how did he know who I am? Right? So I said yes, and then I plopped down. There were sofas all around, and, honestly, I probably would have gotten up and left if I felt I could stand up and walk out of there in a straight line. But I didn't, and, I didn't want to embarrass myself too much. So at that meeting, what happened was, it was either probably during the break, because I'm sure after the meeting I just skedaddled out. I went up to the literature table, and that's why literature is so important, because I didn't know what else to do with myself. I couldn't put 2 words together. I could barely say, my name is Julie, and I live down the street. No, I could, barely say that. So I went to the literature table, and I'm looking, and I've always been a reader, and I picked up the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous because it says the 12 steps, and I'd heard about the steps. And this guy, George, big guy, comes over, says, no, honey, start with this, and he puts a big book in my hand. Right? My life was forever changed. So I went home, and that night I started reading that big book, because I always had problems sleeping. And so I thought, okay, let me start reading this. And, and I say this not to, like, it's boring or anything, but I found comfort in the big book. I found solace in reading those words, and I was able to sleep. In those words, in that book, I further identified. I mean, now I had, as I read, it was like, oh my God, this is what has been wrong with me. I always felt there was some kind of monster that, kept me separate from you, something that kept me separate from everybody. And I found, and why I did, the Jekyll and Hyde things. But in the book I read, it wasn't that. It was my alcoholism. I mean, it says it right in there. The person that's seemingly mild and, pleasant to be around in all other ways, once they drink, they're true Jekyll and Hyde. So I started reading the book, identified so much, and went back the next week. I mean, I didn't know you were supposed to go to more meetings than one, right? And one a week, and I got my newcomer chip, and I also didn't know that, you're supposed to identify as a newcomer every time you were there, but I caught on, and again, I couldn't talk to people for a really long time. It was really, really hard for me. And I was off work, because as I said, I was a teacher at the time. I didn't have to go to work, so I didn't have to see anybody. And I just was able to detox and clean up a little bit. Liz was there, I think. I don't know if at that meeting, but pretty close. So, in the book, it's so wonderful how the steps are set up. I mean, we're set up, it's the 12 steps. Step one, the principle of honesty. I admit that, I admit to the unmanageability, that I'm powerless over alcohol. My life is, my life is unmanageable. And that's kind of crazy. I'm basically admitting that I'm a little crazy. Then in step two, I come to believe that a power greater than myself is going to restore me to sanity. So in step two, I've got a little hope. That's the principle. I get a little hope then. And that's how I felt. I mean, first it's so unmanageable. Then I got a little hope, and this is important. So there was this couple guys that I talked to, and one said, honey, maybe you'd like to talk to a female alcoholic. And I was like, okay. And so he gave me a number, and I called this woman one afternoon, and I said, well, what do I do when I really want to drink? When I really feel, the obsession. And she said, honey, you get down on your knees and you ask God to relieve the obsession for alcohol. And I was like, really? So it's like 3 p.m, and, and I'm feeling pretty jittery. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it. What have I got to lose? So I get down on my knees, and I ask God to remove the obsession. I did not drink that day. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to really try this thing. So the next morning, Ellen, she said, and you might try it in the morning, ask God to remove the obsession. In the evening, at night, thank God for keeping you sober. So I tried that. I didn't believe it. I mean, it didn't mean anything. It was just words, but it worked. I'm here 27 years later to say I have not had a drink. Step 3, made a decision to turn my will and my power over to God as I understand Him. Like I said, I didn't know what that God was. Doesn't ask me to define God. Doesn't ever say that. It just says to be willing. And I was willing. And I kind of had the proof because I wasn't drinking. So that was amazing. Now, step 4, principle of courage. That step 4 gets a little more tricky because I'm to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. I didn't know what that meant. And by the way, I went through about 3 sponsors the first year. No, maybe 1 sponsor the first year. Then I started, I wouldn't like what they'd say, or they didn't understand my feelings, or, all these things. So this one sponsor wanted me to do a certain inventory around a certain subject. I didn't get it. I really didn't. But probably my pride made it so I couldn't really ask for help. And she finally, cut me loose, and it really hurt my feelings. But now I understand that it does take courage. And again, all it really asks is that we make this, it doesn't ask that we do a perfect inventory, especially in the beginning, because we're going to do a lot of inventories. And step 5 is the principle of integrity. I read that inventory to admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of my wrongs. Well, that's a little trickier, but it gets when I'm had the courage to work with the sponsor and to go through that. And if I've got a loving sponsor, then they can help me to see just what are those nasty little defects that are giving me trouble. 6 is willingness. I become willing to turn it over to God, willing to hand it over. And in step 7, the principle of humility, I'm asking God, humbly ask him to remove my shortcomings. Now, I didn't discover right then that I had a lot of pride, because guess how I wanted to do my step 7? You'll never guess. I was taking a trip to Egypt. I thought, I should do step 7 on the top of a pyramid. Little grandiose. I mean, you don't even, in Egypt, you don't go to the top of the pyramids. The temples are all down. But I couldn't do it there. That was like a little, okay, so I can't. I think I tried to do it underwater, but I forgot. But anyway, I was thinking about it. And the humility, I think, is a beautiful thing. Each of the steps, I believe, are set up to teach us to have enough humility to let God in. And in fact, after we read the first 164 pages, the 64, I think, or 54 personal stories at the back of the book are all stories about how individuals have found their God, and they're all written in their own language, and how did they find a power greater than themselves. So let's see, I'm on step 8. Make that list of all that I've harmed, become willing to make amends to them all. 9, as it takes a lot of discipline, because now I have to go out and I have to make my amends. And, we lose a lot of people when it gets to making the amends, because, well, in the beginning, that's all I wanted to do, was make amends to everybody that I thought I'd hurt, right, which was a lot. And thank God I didn't. And thank God we have 8 steps before step 9, so that we are prepared and we are spiritually strong enough to go out and to do that amends. Step 10, it's perseverance. We keep making our inventory at night. And step 11, prayer and meditation. I'm really good with the prayer, and I've gone through sometimes where meditation is easy for me, a lot of times where I just forget, I just get busy. It's like, I'm going to have a cup of coffee, read the paper, but it's nobody. What I love about the program, we're not asked to be perfect. It's progress rather than perfection. So we're not asked to be perfect in any way. 11, and step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we carry the message to another alcoholic, and that's the step of service. And, I'm really happy my sponsee is here tonight. I've got a great sponsor. She lives in Ventura now. But, this program has given me the life. This program has, transformed the person I was and made me into the person I always imagined I could be. And I could never, ever, ever, say enough about it. And I just thought of one thing. I was at the International Convention over last weekend in Vancouver. There were 30,000 people there. We went to a meeting. The main meeting was in the stadium where they have football games, baseball game, whatever, some sports game, tons and tons and tons and tons of alcoholics. It was phenomenal, just phenomenal. Very, very moving, really quite an experience. But, you know, there's nothing that beats being here. There's nothing that beats for me like having a group and those, lots that I know, some that are new faces, and just knowing, just feeling the love, and I feel it here tonight, and I want to thank you all for participating in my sobriety.